Hey everybody, welcome back to Manga Monday's Sunset Edition, the only manga review show where the lighting progressively gets worse over the course of the video, even though it's already dark as shit. I'm going to be talking about Platinum End, the first volume in this video. I don't think the second volume of this is out yet in America, but I know it's being scanslated online. I've only read the first one, but this is the new manga from Tsugumi Oba and Takeshi Obata, the duo who brought us, most famously, Death Note, as well as my favorite manga of all time, Bakuman. Now, this one is very much more along the lines of Death Note than Bakuman. It's going right back into the well of sort of edgy teenager, high concept, kind of like a death game sort of plot. Not quite a death game, but a lot of people are comparing this to Death Note for the obvious reason that it's from the same authors, and it's once again is about a young man who is granted some kind of godlike power, in this case by an angel as opposed to a Shinigami, and this one's more like a Christian mythos as opposed to whatever the hell the Shinigami were supposed to be. I guess there was a lot of Christian mythos like imagery in Death Note, especially in the anime, but this one is an angel who works for God, comes down and gives these powers to this young man as a candidate to become God. And there's like 13 candidates. So in spite of the fact that this is being compared to Death Note, it's really almost the exact same plot as Future Diary, except that the characters have more consistent powers. It's not that they all have the exact same things going, or that they all have wildly different things going on. They have pretty similar ones. In this case, the main character is given the power of two arrows, one which can instantly kill people, and one which can make people fall in love with him, and to such an extent that he basically is able to mind control them. But that effect lasts for like 33 days or something like that. And everyone has, like him and the other candidates, some of them have both of these powers, some of them only have one, some of them may or may not have more. Like, the basically depends on how strong the angel that they have working for them is. So the main character is this young boy who gets this super fucking cute angel girl who's like his guardian angel. God, I can't make this focus well. I'm sorry, it's so dark. Basically, she grants him these powers because she thinks that he could be a good god candidate, and she really wants him to succeed. She's all about him, but what she can't quite grasp is why he wants no real part of this. Now, this kid is a very tortured young soul. He's like 14 years old, and his family died when he was young. He was taken in by his aunt and uncle, who just abused him and treat him like shit, and he sort of gets out of that situation by the end of the first volume because of these powers. All he wants is to live a normal life. He wants to be a normal high school kid. He wants to fall in love with this girl. He just wants everything to go, to let him be happy. And he has a lot of philosophical waxing about his desire for happiness and about like his thoughts on like what morality means to him and how he just wants to like be happy and to treat and to love other people and stuff like that. That's all he wants. So he's in many ways the opposite of Light Yagami. Here's him seeing the angel girl. God, I wish I could get this better in focus because the girl is fucking gorgeous. But he ends up, enraptured in this whole scenario where there's all these angels and all these other candidates to be God who are all using their powers in different ways. The first guy we learn about is this asshole, this smug comedian who decides to use his powers to just rape all the most beautiful women in Japan, which has this kind of epic shot of him in a limo with like every beautiful girl that he's mind controlled to fall in love with him. There's like a limit of how many. I think it's like 12 or something like that. He's crying about how he can't do all 48 members of Akiba 48 at the same time because he can only control so many girls. But yeah, he has them all in this orgy pile. I'm glad the lighting is bad so you can't see all the tits that are actually evident in this. Surprising amount of nipple, but in this manga. But yeah, so the first guy is using his powers for evil. Then we are introduced to someone who's trying to use their powers for justice, who is obviously like the L character of this, but he seems a little bit more of a bad guy, and he wears like a hero suit, and but he's obviously going to be like the other big one that we all need to look out for. And then the main character, here's the guy, here's the other dude. He's another wavy-haired, beautiful guy. And the girl who the main character is in love with comes into play towards the end of the volume in a way that seems like it could be interesting. So yeah, it's a very plot heavy thing. This is mostly about this death game story, how these different mechanics are going to be explored. And honestly, this first volume, like, I didn't find it that interesting because most of it is just setting stuff up. Like, so much of it is just like endless exposition scenes. There's so many scenes of this, the angel girl explaining rules at great length, or them discussing the main character kid's emotions and like his philosophies on life, none of which are very deep or interesting. Like, this is definitely written for like 14-year-olds. You know, like this is a very teenage feeling manga. It's very like shonen, in spite of the fact that it's so edgy and like violent and has sex and nudity and stuff like that. But like, it's obviously meant for a younger audience. In much the same way that Death Note was, but I feel like Death Note had more of a broad appeal than this. This feels a little bit more juvenile than Death Note did. But so much of it is just talking and explaining the rules of stuff, and like, you know, there's very little of the powers being used in interesting ways or getting into characters' heads. You know, there's not much establishment of how this whole game is going to be played out, like what each person's goals are, how those goals are going to come into conflict. It's just a whole lot of explaining the ground rules of the game. And so, you know, it was kind of interesting, but it didn't really feel like it was going anywhere. And like, I mean, I'm curious enough about what might happen that like, if I started hearing people say that the series gets really good, then I'd be interested in it. But it doesn't have the sort of ideological simplicity that like the strength and simplicity that Death Note had, where it was like really about this battle between this guy who's trying to like end all crime on Earth and this other guy who's trying to put a stop to him, and you know, they both believe in their own brand of justice. It's this battle of wits that was really exciting. This doesn't have that element. It doesn't have the battle of wits feel. It doesn't have like a villain who's exactly opposed to the ethos of the main character. You know, it just kind of feels like it's wandering around through the story, just introducing all these elements of like how the story works without really doing anything with those elements, at least so far. I mean, I don't think it's bad. It's just not terribly interesting yet, and there's just so much sitting around, and it really feels like a shame because Takeshi Obata is an amazing artist. Like, there's illustrations in here, like character art, that's just really fucking gorgeous, but all the characters do is stand around and talk. And I mean, Tsugumi Oba scripts have always been very talkative. Death Note and Bakuman were no different. Most of it was characters sitting around talking. I just gotta wonder, like, isn't Obata bored of this by now? Is he not bored of just drawing characters stand around and talk in like hotel rooms and just drawing their ridiculously gorgeous hair, you know? It just feels like a waste to have this beautiful art for a series that's mostly characters standing around. But you know, again, if I started hearing, like, I don't intend to buy the second volume of this. If I started hearing people tell me that this series gets amazing, which I have not been hearing, I've mostly been hearing that it's okay, that it's just kind of a fun little shonen thing, you know. Like, I don't think this is even as exciting as the first volume of Future Diary was, you know. So, like, as far as being this kind of story goes, it's pretty middle of the road. There's a lot of stuff like this out there. There's a lot of these 13 people are given powers and told they have to fight, you know, kinds of stories. Like, this is not treading any new ground. It's definitely not blazing a trail here. It's pretty standard. So, you know, you could pretty much read I mean, if you like that kind of story, maybe you'll like this. I don't think it's terribly exciting yet, but maybe it will get there if you're into that genre. I'm not that big a fan of this genre. You know, I love the duo. I mean, Death Note was fine. I liked Death Note back in the day. I love Bakuman, so I was willing to give this a shot, but ultimately I just kind of felt like this one might not be for me. But, you know, we'll see in the future. Or you'll see, and I'll hear about it. And then maybe read it. That's it. See you in the next week.